What's going on, everybody? This is Randall Barnes, the founder of HBCU Pulse and the host of HBCU Pulse Radio, in the building for another special edition of the show on today, where we're talking about College Hill Season 2, Episode 7, The Aftermath of the well-anticipated, well-discussed fight between Amber and Joseline. As we know, College Hill Celebrity Edition did not show the actual fight. It seems as if next week is going to be the season finale. Man, this season flew by, man. It flew by. And I think, honestly, one of the reasons why this season sped by so quickly is because they showed the first 2 episodes that first night. So I think it's interesting, man. So we're going to go on and get into it. A very interesting season. The episode really centered around, for the most part, the aftermath of Amber and Joseline's fight. So we saw Joseline and Amber both talk to Dr. Petty and also Mr. Derek Bell, who's another administrator that Dr. Petty brought in to help in figuring out what they were going to do with Joseline and Amber. So Dr. Petty tells Amber that they've attempted to create a safe space to have healthy dialogue and agree to disagree in an amicable way. So Amber pleads her case, talking about how Joseline has had a pattern of bullying her and other castmates, and she says she tried to walk past her, but Joseline was still yelling and coming for her after she tried to take herself out the situation. Amber basically says that the moment triggered her due to what she's been through as a mixed person, and she blacked out, which is what I said in the last review and reaction, that, man, listen, Amber said that she's dealt with this her whole entire life, and when she was back in Philadelphia, she used to fight folks for that. She literally said, go back to, I believe that was episode 1 or 2, it was one of the first 2 episodes, she sat with Orion outside the house, and she said that she used to carry a knife to school to defend herself in the situations where she had to fight because of, you know, her mixed race identity, and they used to call her the white girl. So I wasn't surprised that the fight happened. I knew that the fight was going to have something to do with race and her being of mixed race, even when I saw the trailer and saw that there was an altercation, but there wasn't real context behind it. And you can go back to my trailer reaction, what I said during that trailer reaction back in April. Like, I knew it was going to be something that transpired in that way. So when Amber got up and fought Joseline, I really wasn't surprised. Now, I understand the other side of it. I understand that folks understandably and correctly are saying that Amber was wrong. Like, Amber got up and attacked Joseline. She was wrong for that. She clearly and definitely violated the policy that Dr. Petty laid out of no fighting. And you know what? That's something that is totally true. And I think that in my commentary, I glossed over that, and also in my tweets, in which I lost followers because of what I was saying and me having sympathy for Amber, which is crazy to me. Like that, hey, Amber was 1,000% wrong for getting up and hitting Joseline, and Joseline was defending herself. But as we're gonna see, as we talk about how Joseline reacted to the information and the meeting with Dr. Petty, Joseline doesn't understand that she's also culpable in that situation as well. And Amber was really acting out of trauma. So Amber says that in hindsight, she understands that it looked crazy and she wouldn't normally do what she did. But the circumstances of Joseline telling Amber who she was, like, made it where it was a different situation where Amber felt as if she had to get active and defend herself. And then Amber was in the confessional in the scene. She said, quote, "I hope Dr. Petty understands that Joseline instigated this whole thing." Now, Dr. Petty, as we blast back into the meeting, says that she understands that Amber was triggered by that moment, but Alabama State has high standards and she must uphold the integrity of the university and send her home. She wants to send a message to Amber, viewers, prospective students, and everyone else that this isn't tolerated. And Dr. Petty says Amber can no longer be a student at Alabama State University, and Amber was distraught. She didn't understand in that situation that she was getting sent home, and she says, y'all expecting me to get hit first. And then Dr. Petty said, Joseline didn't hit you. And then Amber follows up and says, she was being racist towards me. I'm not supposed to defend myself. And I was like, boy, I know the folks on Twitter, and I know some of the folks that were in the YouTube comments on the last video. I know that they are going to love hearing that, as a lot of these folks already said that she was capitalizing on black spaces, that she was crying, quote, white girl tears, which I personally didn't understand, and that Joseline was right. They felt like Joseline was right, that she doesn't want to be black, she wants to be white. So I know that on Twitter, which I'm not gonna partake, because just for my mental health, and just, I don't want to be arguing all day, but I'm pretty sure that a lot of folks are gonna seize on that comment like racism. I think a lot of folks are going to seize on that. But Dr. Petty emphasized that they were fighting in the classroom on campus and that they will never support that at Alabama State University. And Amber says she understands the rules, but she feels as if it's unfair. So Amber walks out and says in her confessional that it's an injustice. Another thing that I know that the folks that are against Amber, they're anti-Amber on Twitter, on YouTube, on everywhere, they're gonna be like, an injustice? Girl, you don't get on somewhere. But Dr. Petty says to Mr. Bell, quote, violence is violence. It's unfortunate and I wish her all the best. So Joseline comes in next to meet with Dr. Petty and Mr. Bell, and it looks like already she's about to cry. Her eyes were red as she sat down. This clearly was going to be emotional. So Dr. Petty says that she's been doing well in all of her courses, and the faculty members that have taught her say the same thing. Dr. Petty says that this is a safe space for people to share how they feel and what they feel. And Joseline says she had one of the best times of the season debating in that class, in Dr. Trumbull's class, and that Amber, quote, singled her out. Joseline says that Amber left the class twice, and the second time she jumped on her, broke her nail, scratched her face, and that she was defending herself. She doesn't understand why she wasn't able to continue her courses as she was attacked. And at this point, I want to just say this. If you all listen to Joseline's appearance on Drink Champs, and what she said on the Instagram Live that's on HBC Pulse's YouTube right now, and a lot of other venues that she's spoken, as well as on Twitter when the trailer first came out and we saw that Amber and Joseline got into it. She's been talking real tough in the months following this altercation. But in this moment, and I know she might have been playing the game because it seemed as if she actually really did want to stay. And she said one of her life goals was to get a degree, but she looks really remorseful here. And she says that Amber messed her up pretty well. So I think that that is interesting, right? So Joseline felt as if Amber singled her out, and Dr. Petty brings Joseline's mind back to orientation and the syllabus and the strict expectation of conduct for them as students at the university. Dr. Petty spoke to Dr. Trimble before the meeting with Joseline, and she said she went too far in the discussion. Dr. Petty told her, quote, that really wasn't your place. And that was all I was saying last week. It wasn't Joseline's place. No matter what other folks say, no matter what Joseline felt, no matter what any of us felt in that situation, it's supposed to be a productive conversation about their racial mountain. Joseline tries to argue that she has her First Amendment right, freedom of speech. But Dr. Petty says that she was offensive, but Joseline, as we've seen repeatedly through this season and repeatedly through this episode, only cares about herself and how she feels, and rarely ever shows empathy. And you only saw her really show some level of empathy in the situation with New York's dog. Like when like she thought that the dog was her daughter. That was the only time. And she had to be tricked to have show that level of empathy, you know? So Joseline doesn't normally show empathy, and it just simply shows here because Joseline just simply does not understand that she offended Amber. And the thing about Joseline not understanding the real problem here is that she looked at it from her vantage point, because Joseline is also mixed race. And when she would have an identity crisis based on, you know, what she would claim her race to be, she decided, unlike Amber, that I'm black because look at me, I'm black. You know what I'm saying? So like Joseline sort of looked at it from her vantage point instead of the different experience that Amber went through. And the thing is that what I understand, especially after reflecting and watching the episode, is that on a reality TV show, we're seeing their experience, but as a viewer, we're watching from a different, divergent point of view, because we saw that conversation between Amber and Orion. We saw that conversation between Ray J, Orion, and Amber in the last episode where she talked about her racial identity. We saw that. Did Joseline have that conversation with her? Did they talk about that? Did they address that at the house? I'm pretty sure that they didn't. So when you get to Dr. Trimble's class and they're talking about their racial mountain, And Amber says that she doesn't feel as if she identifies with being black or white, or she doesn't feel like comfortable in black or white spaces because of her mixed heritage. I'm pretty sure that Joseline is like, well, I don't care what you think. This is what I think, and this is what I feel, because it wasn't a deeper conversation that was had, unlike with Orion, who understood what was going on, unlike with Ray J, who understood what was going on, and even Parker, who probably went through the exact same thing, and she talked about it as much, but Parker identifies as black. So Parker had the same, racial identity crisis, but she also, like Joseline, identified as black. So I think that the lack of that conversation, because it seems as if it didn't happen, the lack of that conversation and that bonding moment with Amber in that way is what precluded this fight and caused that butting of heads to happen. So Dr. Petty asked Joseline, did she hear Dr. Trimble continue to call her name? Joseline says she heard her calling everyone's name, including Amber, and Joseline also felt as if the whole class was calling on her. So Dr. Petty asked her if she thinks Dr. Trimble was trying to get her to stop. Joseline answers with an understanding that Dr. Trimble didn't want the situation to escalate, but Joseline didn't care, and she wanted to make her point. And Dr. Petty tries to get Joseline to understand that her going overboard in the class discussion disrupted the whole entire learning environment. Dr. Petty says, quote, derogatory language is not welcome here. And of course, Joseline does not understand, and she gets emotional again. So Joseline continues to plead the case that Amber attacked her, and that if she was going to get penalized for this, it wouldn't be right. Dr. Petty and Mr. Bell emphasized that ASU has a zero tolerance policy and that they both violated university policies. So Joseline gets emotional after Dr. Petty told her that she won't be able to continue as a student at Alabama State University. And Dr. Petty seems to sort of be emotional as well. Like if you look at the camera when they trained it on her, because Dr. Petty, I feel like she really was rooting for Joseline. Because remember, like Dr. Petty came to meet Joseline after Joseline called her in that second episode, and Joseline felt as if the castmates weren't rocking with her. So like Dr. Petty really urged her, listen, you have your daughter at home, you really want to do this, you want to do right by her and show her that it's possible, so continue to make that happen. I feel as if like Dr. Petty really was rooting for Joseline, and Joseline was doing a good job. Let's not gloss over that. Joseline was a great student and she was doing great. But the thing is that she had to go because she violated the policy. I think Joseline is not a bad person, and seeing College Hill really crystallized that for me. Joseline's not a bad person, but I think that Joseline also has had traumatic experiences in her life. I think Joseline oftentimes operates off hurt, and I think she oftentimes as well operates without forethought. So in those instances, in those situations, she'll fight, she'll say something, she won't show empathy, and that gets her in a lot of trouble. But I think that College Hill, what it showed me as someone that is familiar with Joseline's brand, and I'm not really a fan of her brand, is that Joseline, she actually is cool. I mean, if you really get through her cussing folks out, her fighting, doing all those different things, I think Joseline's cool. I think Joseline's a good mother. I think that Joseline can be a friend. I think that Joseline, if she really didn't rock the boat and didn't cause so many problems, I think that Joseline could have had a really smooth season. She could have graduated, and she might have challenged my girl Parker as valedictorian. But I think that Joseline's innate nature to rock the boat and not see things from another point of view is what got in her way. So Joseline is off the show, and she just simply didn't understand it. Joseline talked about how good of a student she's been, and she says that it's wrong how they're doing her as she leaves out. And she says in her confessional, where she appeared to be at the airport, that she didn't think that Dr. Petty met her where she was. And Joseline, at first I thought that Joseline got on the plane and went home without saying anything, but we saw that she stayed in the area, stayed at hotel, probably the same hotel that she was staying at before, like when they told them like, hey, after the fight, we need y'all to stay in separate hotels. She probably stayed at that same hotel because we saw that she eventually went to meet with Ray J, then she went back to the house. And we're gonna talk about that in a second. So we first see Amber go back to the house and get her stuff. Amber informed Ray J, who then informed the house, and they were all on FaceTime with her, that she got kicked out for the fight. So when Amber goes back, Parker immediately embraces her as she walks in. And Amber emphasized to the group that she really tried to stay, but she knew what was up the moment that she walked in. So we see Parker in her confessional say that she doesn't support the fighting or the bullying, but she understands exactly where Amber's coming from as a mixed race woman herself. And we saw in that last episode that Parker was really rocking with Amber after what happened. So that was understandable that Parker really felt her way, and she almost was living vicariously through Amber in both situations of the fight and also the consequences for the actions. So Amber said bye to all the cast members and shared memorable experiences with them, and everyone was sad to see Amber go, which, spoiler alert, is sort of a contrast, to what happened with Joseline. So the cast members despondently after that head to their field trip to the Harris house. After their civil rights history class, we see another very brilliantly shot and very brilliantly, broadcasted, trip to the Harris house, which has a very big place in Black history, especially in Alabama, and especially with Dr. King going there. So it was a lot of great conversations. Once again, I urge you, if you haven't watched the episode already, to go watch the episode however you can and go see that scene. It was very powerful, and research the Harris house, right? But Ray J said this at the Harris house. Ray J said, quote, "We should have been here 2 days before so Amber and Joseline could have seen this," because Ray J believes that if they saw what the civil rights leaders had to go through that were in the Harris house and was inundated with that history, they might have looked at their fight and, the issues that they had a bit differently. I don't agree. I think that what happened would have still happened, because Amber was already fed up with Joseline. Amber felt as if nobody was hearing her, and Amber already was going through some traumatic stuff. And then she felt as if Joseline had a disregard. So I don't think them going to the Harris house before the incident, I don't think that would have stopped them, because both Amber and Joseline went to the Legacy Museum, and they were inundated with that history as well. So I don't think that would have solved anything, but wishful thinking about Ray J. I like that thought. So they found out later in the night that Joseline got expelled as well after she texted Ray J and said that they kicked her off the show. And the cast seemed to have a different point of view. And the reason why is because Joseline from day one was being combative, abrasive, a bully, the whole entire 9 yards. Now, if you look at it as, hey, they should get over it, New York did. And her in New York got into a whole entire argument that we were like, wow, New York and Joseline, 2 generations of Black reality TV getting into it. Remember we had that discussion? It seems as if it happened in season 1. It seems as if it happened a year ago, because all this stuff has happened since then, and I think that's growth. I think that's mature. That's great. But also we have to understand that some folks process things differently. So hopefully the discourse around this episode isn't, oh, Parker and Quay are wrong because they didn't send Joseline off. Allow them to process how they feel in their own way, especially Parker. Quay too, because Quay was really close to Amber, and he had an issue with how Joseline was treating Amber, and him and Joseline got into it over that, and then he also got into it with Amber over that subsequently as well in episode 5. But I think that they have every right to feel the way that they feel. Now, before we get to the parts where we see the rest of what happens between Joseline and the rest of the house and Ray J goes to meet her, we see Tiffany still trying to seduce Orion, and it seems to have worked, as her and Orion had a moment in the bathroom that we would say that they, got it in. We will say that it happened. And I'm sorry, I know I've been talking about it the whole entire season. I have nothing really to say about that. I'm starting to wonder if New York really has a fiance. I'm really starting to wonder, because it's bro, you can't have a fiance. And I know that after this, because it seemed like you got with Orion at this point. Bro, you can't have a fiance. It's either New York during the season called it off, she was just lying the whole entire time and trying to put on a show, or after this aired, bro, we're not together anymore, or y'all was in an open relationship or something, because the last thing you gonna do if you're my fiance is run a bath for another man. And I don't even think that's being insecure. Okay, I understand you reality TV now and all the different stuff, but you ran a bath for another man? And this man, he been with other women too, and he said this is the first time a woman has run a bath for him since his mother 20 years ago. This man ain't had nobody run a bath for him since the 90s. New York out here running a bath for this man. You know what I'm saying? So it's if I'm the fiance, we're done. I'm done with you. Skirt. Ain't nothing to cut them off, snip, snip. Like, we done, man. Like, cause that's disrespectful. I don't care if it's on TV. I don't care if it's an act. I don't care if they were faking it. I don't care what's going on. Like, nah, we not doing that at all. So that was just sort of odd to me. I felt like the whole entire thing with New York, it's sort of childish, you know what I'm saying? I sort of thought it was. I mean, I got love for New York, but I ain't really feeling that. And then plus, if this was like a normal episode, like let's say this happened episode 4, where the tension in the house wasn't as high and Joseline and Amber weren't added. Like it'd be a totally different situation to me. But we have this hanging over the show of Joseline and Amber getting kicked off the show. And we found out that Joseline gets kicked off the show and they find that out. It just didn't really appeal to me. And I just thought it was sort of childish. And I wanted to sort of skip through that and see what occurred with, Joseline and Amber and the rest of the cast and the whole entire 9 yards. So Ray J meets up with Joseline after everything that went down. So Joseline still doesn't understand her culpability in the whole situation. And I honestly think she'll go to the grave not understanding. But anyway, like her and Ray J talking, Ray J tries to say like, you don't understand that, you pushed her. And Joseline says that she doesn't. Ray J, as we see, as the show broadcasted, sort of, pushed past it. And Ray J says that he wishes that Joseline and Amber could have graduated with them. And Joseline is real cool in that moment. She's like, yeah, it is what it is, but I'm rooting for you. And Ray J convinces her, you need to come and see the rest of the cast. Like, come back to the cast house. And Joseline's like, I don't know if they want to see me. And Ray J's like, nah, man, like just come to the cast house and just give a proper goodbye. So we don't see it immediately because we see Amon finally got the opportunity to learn how to sew. It actually wasn't a class. It was something that Amon went separately to do. Shout out to Amon. Now, granted, Amon, I want to say, my brother, you won 1 ring in 2016 with the Cleveland Cavaliers. You didn't win rings. You won a ring. But shout out to Amon. So this was very interesting by the College Hill producers. So they invited Dr. Yaba Blay to come and speak to the cast members following the fight between Joseline and Amber. And Dr. Blay is the author of One Drop, Shifting the Lens on Race. And shout out to Dr. Blay. I'm pretty sure that there are going to be a lot of people that are going to go to Amazon and buy her book. I urge you to buy her book. It seems to be very interesting, and I've heard of it before. I'm definitely adding that to my reading list. I'm trying to read 20 books this year and really smash through that. I have a lot of time. I'm on 5. I've read 5 books this year. So that I might add that to, my list so that can be on the hit list of the books that I read for this year, right? So shout out to Dr. Blay. So they brought her in to help the cast members process what happened and have a broader conversation around mixed race identity. And her book specifically talks about what it means to be Black for different people. And Dr. Blay said this, and I thought this was very interesting. She said, quote, "The world won't allow us to be who we are. We live in a radicalized society. Sometimes the conversation we think about race is really about colorism." And I thought that was powerful. I thought it was also powerful how Parker, said her piece about what was going on and how the cast members generally believe that Amber and Joseline really could have benefited from this conversation. And I wish they could have brought Dr. Blay in from Jump Street. Like, as they were talking about racial identity before this happened, like, I think that there could have been some concessions that were made to have Joseline further understand what was going on. And you know what I probably would have done? And this just popped in my mind. Joseline could have stayed. And here's what I would have done. Now, I know that this isn't your typical reality TV show, but I think that I would have made it where Joseline would have stayed contingent upon her meeting with Dr. Blay and doing a presentation in front of the class about mixed race identity. I thought that would have been cool because I'm starting to see what people are saying. I will concede to this. I think that Joseline was wrong, but I will concede to Amber attacking her and Joseline possibly could have stayed. But I think that it just should have been some concessions to her staying. But I also do understand why Dr. Pettit was like, nah, we have a zero tolerance policy. Because you got to realize that Alabama State decided that they were going to have this reality TV show on their campus. So Alabama State wants to ensure that they put their foot down and it's like, nah, like you're not going to come to our campus and fight. You know what I'm saying? So Alabama State had to make sure that they kept it P. They had to make sure that they kept it playing and was like, nah, like that don't go down here. You know what I'm saying? Like that don't go down here. We let y'all have this, but y'all are going to govern by our policies, by our rules, by our code of conduct. But I think that would have been cool to have Joseline talk to Dr. Blay. And if Joseline pulled up a little bit sooner, it seemed like, she probably would have got the opportunity to sit down and talk to Dr. Blay and maybe have the understanding of what went on. But Joseline did pull up, and Amon, Tiffany, Ray J, and Orion were there to see her, and they sent her off. They had drinks with her. Quay and Parker were not there. They went to see a movie. I wonder what movie they went to see, but they went to see a movie, and that implied they really weren't excited to see her. And Parker says as much in her confessional, where Parker's like, I'm not really here to see Joseline. I really don't want to see her at this point. And she was talking out the side of her neck, and she got handled. So Parker really ain't rocking with Joseline. I'm pretty sure that Parker and Joseline are probably going to never say anything to each other again at this point. So they gave Joseline a send-off the same way they did Amber. They did a montage of her best moments. And then the episode ends, and they preview what seems to be the season finale, in which they graduate. And it seems as if brother Ray J is going to graduate. So shout out to Ray J, and Parker is currently in the lead for valedictorian. So we're going to see if my girl Parker continues to stay at that level or if someone else gets it. But also they give their final exams, which I think is going to be interesting. And I'm sort of glad we're going to see what seems to be a non-drama filled episode, and I'll be excited to cover that. But outside of that, ladies and gentlemen, that is it for my review of College Hill Season 2, Episode 7 on today. Make sure to follow HBCU Pulse on Instagram and YouTube at HBCU Pulse, Twitter and TikTok, the HBCU Pulse. Make sure to listen to HBCU Pulse Radio on SiriusXM, Channel 142, HBCU, every Friday at 5 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Central. If you want to donate to HBCU Pulse, donate any amount to $ HBCU Pulse or paypal.me/HBCU Pulse. And I will see you on the other side, and I'll catch you in the next video where we're talking about all things College Hill.
Like what you hear?
Yeah.
Subscribe to HBCU Pulse Radio on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Also, head to HBCUPulse.com to stay up to date on what's going on in the HBCU community. Thank you for listening to HBCU Pulse Radio.